actions of the former government.
Thank you, Senator Polley. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. And today I rise to talk about something that is desperately needed in our own home state of Western Australia, and that is upgrades to the Henderson industrial precinct. Western Australia has a very long and a very proud history of supporting our nation's defence and defence industry, both in times of peace and also in war. Today we have world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities that are supported by training and upskilling of using the latest defence technologies. But the Henderson Maritime Precinct, which is 23 kilometres south of Perth, is home to some of the most innovative defence supply companies and workforces, particularly related to shipbuilding and maintenance. The Australian Marine Complex and its common user facility was an initiative of the state government, and in 2003 was funded by the federal government. At the time it was build it, and we hope they will come, and industry has certainly come over the preceding nearly 20 years. But it is time for this facility to get a much-needed upgrade to turn it into now a world-leading facility. Sadly, the WA state government is doing what it does best, and that is contemplating an issue, conducting a review, then conducting another review, and then doing absolutely nothing. And it is now time to get into gear. We know what needs to be done, and it now just needs to be done. And just for those of you who are not aware of Henderson, since opening in mid-2003, the Australian Marine Complex has generated more than 21,000 direct jobs and delivered projects worth billions of dollars. And it has almost single-handedly facilitated the fabrication of millions of tonnes of goods and manufactured goods, particularly for our oil and gas sector in the northwest. And since 2017, I have been taking many state and federal colleagues, ministers and also prime ministers to Henderson to see just what our state is capable of and is delivering. Now, while Henderson didn't make its way into the 2016 White Paper as a major, officially as the second major shipbuilding facility in Australia, we did manage to remedy that, although it didn't quite make the White Paper. Now, the precinct itself is made up of a unique mix of agreements between the West Australian state government, the federal government and defence industry companies, including BAE, Austal and our industrial powerhouse Civmec. It's home to around 150 other businesses in 5 designated zones: shipbuilding, technology, support industry, fabrication and a recreational boating precinct. But it is bursting at the seams, and it desperately now needs Latitude 32 to be developed by the state government, which has sat on for 5 years, so that we have a much increased capacity to develop our logistics, freight and supply and manufacturing supports to not only to the shipbuilding sector but also to our mining and oil and gas sectors. So Western Australia's naval shipbuilding industry is going from strength to strength, largely off the back of the coalition government's investment in 70 new ships to be built in Australia, naval ships. The shipbuilding precinct itself is located on the beautiful Western Australia coast, overlooking Garden Island and HMAS Stirling. The Anzac-class frigates are currently, and have been for a number of years, upgoing their mid-life cycle capability assurance program, and it is quite an impressive sight to see 3 of our Anzacs up on the dry dock, actually up on the docks itself, being maintained. But that's not all. We've also got Austal Shipyard, who have built hundreds of vessels, both here in Australia and overseas. And they are currently in the process of delivering at any one time up to 5 Guardian-class patrol boats and also the Cape-class patrol boats for the Navy. Their vessels are on schedule and are complete to deliver a further 5 in coming months. In total, 21 Guardian-class patrol boats are scheduled to be built, and again production is well underway and delivery is also well underway. Now, the state government at the Australian Marine Complex owns and runs a common user facility, and also most of the key infrastructure such as wharves, the floating dock, the self-propelled modular transporters and also vessel transfers. And there are very long-standing and well-documented deficiencies and infrastructure challenges, which is now becoming a considerable constraint to industry in the area. Now, all of these have been known for a long time. But again, we have the Minister and the Premier in Western Australia constantly saying they're ready for business, they want more from Navy and from civil companies, but they are not providing the facilities that are required to keep growing the industry in Western Australia. So, what are the sort of things that need to be done? Well, in May 2018, I started a very constructive three-way dialogue between the State Minister Paul Papalia, the then Defence Industry Minister Christopher Pyne, on how the federal and state governments can work together to transform this remarkable precedent. So that was in 2018. Not only did we talk about what was required, but I also did send correspondence to both, and we had a very amicable and agreeable exchange, and we agreed on what was required to be done. And the McGowan government did agree back then in 2018 that a failure to upgrade state infrastructure would limit the chances to take advantage of emerging opportunities which are well and truly with us now. But the state is now in danger of losing a number of these projects because they simply have not provided the infrastructure. So in November of 2020, the McGowan government released 2 planning studies, and they allocated just under $90 million for 4 projects to fund some of the major works there, but still not the majority of works that were needed. So in the correspondence with Chris Pyne and Paul Papalia at the time in 2018, I went through and we agreed on the priorities. So the priorities that I saw were the mapping and establishment of a high and wide load corridor and the sinking of overhead power lines that are clearly restricting access for oversized freight. The local and regional road network needed upgrades to support the efficient and safe access to the precinct now and in the future. And anybody who drives through the Henderson precinct at change of shift hours will know just how congested and just how dangerous those roads are due to the lack of ability. The traffic signals at all dangerous intersections either need to be put in or they need to be upgraded. And workers find it incredibly difficult, if they don't have a car, to get in and out of the area. Now, the Thornley to Coburn rail line will improve accessibility, but the problem is it is still kilometres away from the Henderson precinct, and the state government for 4 years is going to be putting in new bus routes from that and the Fremantle Railway so that we can get apprentices and workers in and out efficiently into that area. There is also a pressing strategic need for a second shipping channel to both the Australian Marine Complex and in particular HMAS Stirling, which is a state government responsibility. In fact, the work had started under the previous Liberal government, but it has not proceeded, and that is not only a strategic barrier for any visiting submarines and ships to HMAS Stirling, but also it is a significant constraint just having one channel. Again, delayed and delayed and delayed. We know what needs to be done at Henderson. The state government has had a nearly $10 million study paid for by the federal government when I was Minister for Defence. It said exactly the same things that we did in 2018 that needed to be done. There is a very good master plan that has been developed with the federal government, with Defence and the WA state government, and yet again they simply will not act. I don't know why, but again it is review. They've got the money, they've got the plan. We know what we need to do to attract not only defence for the next few decades, but also to expand the other industries there. Finally, I'm also incredibly concerned that the Albanese Labor government in their first budget was silent on what has happened to the $4.3 billion that the previous government have allocated for a large vessel,
Senator Reynolds,
dry
your
berth
time
at Henderson,
has
and it's time for the
expired.
federal government